Hi everyone, welcome to an amazing new day with our Leading This Generation talk with me, Ribea, Elise. We are this month focusing on our discussions that relates to our generation's right to be fine. And when we say our discussion, then we actually say that there's a lot of discussions in our season that involves humanity in general. And when it involves humanity, it involves our right to explain ourselves, and it also involves our right to be fine, being human beings, where we find ourselves at in the different circumstances in our countries, in the different ways that countries are being challenged, and also in the different requirements for humanity in general to be able to be fine, the one person with the other person. It is one thing for us to say that as a generation of people, we are required to be fine. But it's another thing for humanity to learn that us being fine, where we find ourselves at in our countries, where we find ourselves at with the state of this world in general, and where certain countries doesn't really reveal what is happening in this world. And therefore, we have that requirement to say what it is that we say, a generation that is the human being that has to look at all and has to listen to all that is happening in this world and have to find themselves fine through that on a daily basis. It is that for the international world to find themselves managing a process that they feel fine for them and for certain people. By how things are in our generation, what the international world in our generation today represent is exactly chaos. And when we say our countries and the world is chaotic, then we are not going to say that we want to look at the quietness in a certain country. We are going to say that the international world today is chaotic. It is all over the place. It is disruptive, it is aggressive, it is abusive, and it is that is division and dividing humanity, the one against the other. It is an oppressive way of management in this world, and as human beings, we have the right to say that, you know what, that is not fine with us. You know what, certain people might say that they might agree with the processes that is happening in this world today, but for a leadership role today, that leaders find themselves going on a daily basis with what's required of them and pretending that what's happening in this world is not actually happening in certain countries. Today, as an international generation, we have the right to say that it is not fine. It is not fine to look at circumstances in countries that are today states of wars. It is not fine to look at countries that are today like what happened in Maui today. We empathize with them, but it is not fine for the world to harm one another in that way. It is not fine for generations of people today to look at Africa today and to see gun shootings in Congo. We see gun shootings today in Nigeria. We see gun shootings today in Ethiopia. We see gun shootings in Sudan. In so many countries, these young boys are not being aggressed because they want to be. They are being aggressed by leaders that implements processes that the leaders feel is fine for leadership in this world. Today, Ribea, Elise is firm with saying that the way of leadership is chaotic. It is aggressive and abusive to humanity. The gunshot instructions that goes to South African communities to on a daily basis find gun shootings in the communities that we were educated it's going to be gangsterism. Ribea Elise today says that it is not gangsterism, it is abusiveness that's happening in countries. And therefore, as humanity, we have the right to speak up for all that is aggressing our countries and for certain leaders that wants to find themselves fine, enjoying the process and the chaos that is happening on earth. We want to say that we have a requirement in our generation. And our requirement is that the world are being led in a way that is fine for every human being. And that it is not that when we are busy managing the process, then someone goes to disturb countries about it. It is that everyone has the right to say that where we are at, when someone leads us into a season that is non-oppressive to us, then we implement what's required so that we do not oppress and aggress one another any further in our generation. And that is where we want to be at with the discussion today of leading this generation. For our generation to have to implement in COVID-19, they said close the borders down in minutes to process in the countries. For our generation to have learned that we have been reprimanded through a COVID-19 season about the processes and chaos in this world. And when we were reprimanded, a generation, through the COVID-19 season, the request was close the borders down and manage the processes in every country in a way that no country is going to distract or disrupt any process that relates to everyone in this world. And no countries are going to send messages to one country to the other country that relates to abusivenesses and to oppressions and to killings and to wars in this world. It is that, and to aggressions in this world. It is that the aggressiveness, as we have explained in our HR 23 discussion, that when we look at the world today in general, aggression is not today only a statement that someone is making concerning a situation that is argumentative. Aggression today is an argumentative circumstances that results in fighting and that is finding themselves in a fighting environment. And the world today finds themselves arguing countries the one with the other country. And while countries are arguing, they find themselves in aggression today. And when Ribea Elise explains aggression today, it is not that countries say that there's no war happening in this world. No, aggression we have learned ever since we were young. When you find yourself in an aggressive state of mind, you find yourself arguing constantly the one with the other. And I've explained in my own circumstances what aggression means. And it means that every time you find yourself in argument, then you are not going to be reasoning in a way that is fine the one for the other. And therefore, the state of war in this world, the Ribea Elise does not call a war only, but I reprimand it in a way that is the aggression that governments argue the one with the other about. I say that get out of the argumentative state of it and manage the process in that there is a communicative process required in this world. It is that we look at away aggression and we say that we are not aggressed. That when you reason differently with someone, when you cannot get into one discussion with someone, when you cannot explain a situation and you cannot discuss a situation in a way that is fine for everyone involved in a war or in a gun shooting state in a country, then you are arguing the one with the other. The parliamentary houses today are finding themselves arguing with the communities today, and the parliamentary houses and the communities' arguments find themselves in so much aggression because it's processes that are required to be managed. It is only processes that are required to be managed in a way that is non-abusive to the person and to the human being in the country. And the human beings sometimes are not difficult. The oppressions in countries are sometimes humiliative and abusive without it being someone that fights with you in person. And that is why Ribea calls the state of this world an aggression state, because in an aggression state it is not revealed that people are arguing. In an aggression state sometimes people are differentiating with one another and they are arguing with one another without the argument being an argument sometimes. And only because of that, the only requirement is that people that find themselves being deprived in households, being oppressed in households, finding themselves in the poverty state of circumstances in this world, the only thing that they sometimes require of government is to implement processes that are fine for everyone in countries. Processes that does not aggress them and processes that does not aggress the country in general. These are the only things that leaders sometimes have to work on. Leaders sometimes want to find themselves wanting to explain themselves so much that they forget that when they try to explain themselves of where they're at and having to reason why they have to make certain certain decisions, the more they try to explain themselves, is the more that they find themselves in aggressive communications and in aggressive circumstances. And therefore, the only requirement that people that find themselves in countries that are oppressed today is having is that the government leaders learns today to discuss matters and to structure countries in such a way that is non-aggressive and that is non-argumentative to this world. There's today a lot of voice going out in the world, and the loudest of voices today in this world that Ribea, Elise, that relates to the Maui fires, that relates to the Syrian Turkey's earthquakes that happened, is the fact that some people say to some people, I want to build this country, and some people say, and I don't care how I build the country, and they destroy people out because they want to build the world today. I always say there's a way that leaders can explain certain things to humanity. There's a way that leaders can tell humanity, we want to build in the city, can you all please move that way? There's a way that leaders can explain that they want the Hawaii today to look like the Hawaii beach party that many people want to enjoy in certain times. So it is aggressive for leaders to lead the world in a way that a Maui fire today looks like a natural process in this world. We have learned that there's so much natural things that was created by someone who has caused someone else to be harmed in this world. And only therefore we require constructive listening when we require processes to be managed in a way that is non-oppressive to the human being today. We thank the teams of Australia who has built Australia very nice. We appreciate the teams of New Zealand who has built New Zealand very nice. We appreciate everyone today in the international world who has really played an important part, but we cannot say that everyone was not involved in the building of those countries and cities. We look today at the generation of people that wants to give the other one the upper high hand to say, you have done a great job. And today, while Australia is one of those countries that the people who have built Australia are very proud of themselves, and they are graced with the world because they want to build the world about it. We are today saying to the office teams in New Zealand that y'all are proud of yourselves, but y'all are disrupting the world. And Ribea, Elise can testify. I've been employed in so many offices in New Zealand, and the way that the communication goes from these countries to certain countries is disruptive and is oppressive, and I do not agree with it. And I know we have family in international countries today, but our families have to find themselves fine because our families are also being targeted by the discussants in the rooms of these builders that have built the cities amazingly today. I know that there's a lot of complaints happening in this world, and there's a lot of people that feel that they have done it all while they have not allowed other people to manage the processes with them. And therefore, I say to Team Australia, a job well done. I say to Team New Zealand today, a job well done. And I say, while you're working with Dubai to try and oppress the world in a job well done process, you're not going to disrupt the processes of this world, and you're not going to further manage processes that is going to aggress humanity further. I say that we reprimand and we request the leadership in these countries that finds out how are these countries having to communicate to countries where they need to build cities. I say that we are not gonna find ourselves in further aggression in our generation, rather than requiring the people who want to be applauded today with a job well done to take a step back so that leaders can manage the process in a way that is non-abusive to the countries that still feels that they still want to build their countries, but they are being oppressed because someone else wants to build it. And only therefore I say thank you to everyone who has given that is required for Zimbabwe. China, I said the other day, thank you for that. Zimbabwe appreciates that. My Mama Anna was very much about her Zimbabwean. and her Zimbabwean people. And when Ribea, Elise today say that we are not going to address Africa when we go and assist Africa. We are not going to say, Africa, come and borrow by us, when we know that finances in this world is ever available in this world. We are not going to bomb people out in countries when we learn that we are building in our countries. We are not going to go and have destructions and disruptions when we learn that what has happened in Syria and Turkey was because the Syrian people felt oppressed, and then the earthquake was fine enough. We learned that there's lots of communications happening amongst humanity and amongst other parts of the universe today, and that is communications that relates today to earthquakes, that relates today to Africa being disruptive and aggressive, that relates today to storms in this world, and that relates today to very much processes that are abusive, but that are being managed by certain people that want to abuse and disrupt other countries. It has been nice for leaders in this world to have many years worked on processes that they want to be the first world country. And as we've mentioned this before in leadership discussion, we have mentioned that leaders want to find themselves working on processes that is still a first world country, and Africa to them still a third world country. They've worked for years on processes that is a first world country, and other parts of the world that finds themselves in third world processes. We have worked with leaders today that has looked also at India as a third world country, and the other people in this world find themselves in first world countries. And today we want to say to those leaders that has managed those processes, it has been fine for a certain generation, but you are not going to disrupt our generation any further into poverty because of a first world and the third world process. It is those things that I always say, there is no right from wrong. You are not going to disrupt the world anyway with the first world and the third world process, because all of those processes are abusive to humanity. And I know it's looking fine for some leaders for many years to say that they are the best economically and financially and where they're required to be at, but today we say that humanity requires that is fine and fair for everyone, and that is where we want our leaders to be at in this season. And when we today say that first world countries and third world countries, then today we want to be firm to say that the requirement is for the process of first world and third world countries that G7 teams and teams that manages the world in meetings and international discussion have to allow themselves to listen to the circumstances in this world rather than listening to where they want to see the world a few years from today. Financially fine, I say that in the currentness of today, the first world process and the third world process is disruptive to humanity, it is abusive to humanity, and it is aggressive to humanity. I say that today in the currentness of the circumstances on this earth, it is amazing to find ourselves working on a first world process that countries wants to be the best in this world. I say that the requirement of the world today is that humanity look at another human being and finds themselves fine, or they rather find themselves in contrast to themselves when it comes to decision making of first world countries and third world countries. I said that the process of a first world country is an amazing leadership process, but the chaotic leadership requirements that are going from one country to the next country today is oppressive, it is kidnappings, it is abusive, it is woman stabbings, it is wars and argumentative. It is, and then I say that under circumstances like that, and then a first world requirement finds itself by the wayside of life and finds itself waiting until the world are being managed in a way that is fine and that is non-oppressive for everyone. what I also want to say is that I know that a lot of leaders found themselves involved in a lot of things that happened. And when I say a lot of things that happened, then I say there was women abusers, there was prostitutions, there was rape and abuse, there was all the things that when we look today at the world in general, then we learn that leaderships in parliamentary houses, we have mentioned that in our previous discussion, were part of those meetings sometimes. And today we have learned that the president of Thailand went and he was imprisoned because of corruption. I always say that our generation are being educated that he are being charged with corruption. I always say that when the world learns that this is a president, and the president forms part of a leadership role in our world. And when the president moves away from the leadership role, then I learned that the president find themselves involved in corruptions and involved in a whole lot of things that is related to abuses of the countries. We do not know why presidents are managed in such a way. We do not know if presidents are forced to do crime while they are in the presidency role. But we learn that every president that completes their term find themselves imprisoned or find themselves part of the crime team and of crime investigations. I always say that when we educate a generation of people that this is a leader and a leader leads and a leader is in the leadership of the country, then when the leader ends its term, we do not go and oppress the leader. We do not go and disrespect the leader of that. We do not go and oppress the leadership role. Then we ask our generation, then what are humanity educating when humanity imprisons a leader and humanity also say but a leader is a leader? And we've learned that it has happened with many political leaders and that they were maybe required to do the crime, and now it's all over the place that every political leader finds themselves in aggression and in crime. And when it's the everyday human being that is managing the process in such a way, then Ribea's opinion is to the everyday human being who's now not the political leader but who finds themselves voting for the political leader. When the everyday human being is aggressed with a political leader, rather find a way of managing the political process of government rather than a group of people working on political leaders are dead, and when political leaders finish their term, then they are imprisoned, because it has been visible that it happened in a lot of countries, and a lot of political leaders are required to involve themselves in a lot of crimes in this world. And now the political leaders are aggressed because they are not respected in our generation and they are not being appreciated because humanity wants them to be a political leader, and after the leadership term, then humanity wants to imprison them. The process is wrong. The process is abusive to the leader. And if I'm the human being that has to vote for a leader and I sit on a team of people that manage the process in a way that they are depriving leaders or oppressing leaders, then I will give my opinion and say, but us oppressing ourselves, because if I put a leader first in a leadership role, and after the leadership role, I then require a leader to do a crime, and then a leader must go and be imprisoned after that. If the process is there, then I'm going to have to want to find out who's managing that process, because the team exactly managing that process is the team that is exactly managing a generation of people into wars and into crimes and into aggressions. And therefore, that leadership process that the world are internationally managing in our season that is corruptive to the parliamentary leader and to the education of a parliamentary leader. Ribea again says there's no two ways about it. It's either right or wrong with that management process. And on the human being level of voting for parliamentary leaders, that process also needs to be managed in a way that is non-abusive to the leader. And I find myself listening to the circumstance, and I tell myself that the process that the leaders, political leaders, are abused on their seat, and the process that the country find themselves working on a first world country is the same team that manages countries into wars. So the same team that manages political leaders into imprisonment is the same team of people that manages countries into first world countries and into war circumstances. And if I'm the human being today, then I have a question for myself as well as I have a question for everyone. Why would I want to aggress myself, and why would I want to aggress the international people to find themselves in wars and in circumstances that are oppressive? I always say that we have learned that there's satanic people in this world. We have learned that there's gangsters in this world. We have learned that there's people who do crime and they don't want to do crime. And there's people that find themselves very much in anger and aggressions in this world. And then there's the person that really, when I get angry, but I won't now go and take a weapon and harm you unless I was not really oppressed and abused. And the Ribea type of person would now definitely not take a weapon to harm you. And if the Ribea type of person is not leading in a leadership role today, then who are leading a generation that they are? They say they are not satanic. They say they are not in crime. They say they are not in murdering seeds or in corruptions in this world. They say they are not the team of people that are angry because they were oppressed, and then they can find themselves killing and harming people. But they want to say today that they are leaders in this world, and they want to find themselves in circumstances of decision makings of putting one country to the next country in poverty and in war arguments. And then Ribea, Elise, then who are those team of people that are leading the world in such a way? Because those team of people are definitely probably, sorry for that, those team of people are definitely probably finding themselves on satanic seats, and they are not saying that they are satanic. And most of the times we have learned that even the church was crucifying Jesus Christ in his season. Even the church sits in meetings where the church give other human beings up on a daily basis. And when the church feel that Ribea Elise is not fine, and Ribea Elise is oppressive, and the church find themselves in argument with Ribea Elise's name in meetings on a daily basis, then the church's opinion is not going to be fine for our generation. And Ribea Elise says, when it comes to the generation being menaced in a way that it is fine for everyone, then I'm going to say that the church who's crucifying Ribea Elise and who puts Ribea's name in danger on a daily basis in meetings with arguing with my name in it is a church that cannot manage the world in general. And we have learned that that's why the world has satanic people, because God of everyone has told himself that these human beings are going to deal with a satanic environment, because they are going to have to reveal their ways of reasoning with one another when they say that they don't find themselves being satanic on a daily basis. The decisions that are oppressive to this world is decisions that find themselves in the house of God. And I've mentioned today that God allowed satanic to be satanic because the satanic environment of God and the satanic presence of the universe is protective to everyone. In the strength that God finds himself being God at in season, and in the challengeness of being God in Ribea Elise's body, and Ribea Elise's body, it is God doing it. But we all have learned that God is everything about us, and we can't even reason and say it is God doing it. And then on the day the satanic person that reasons is God say there's sensitive things in this universe, and if I allow the church to manage it, the church is going to be disruptive, and it's going to be storms, and it's going to be Genesis 7 when Noah has to go to the ark about it, because the church way of reasoning is that they are double-minded about leadership, and the satanic person's way of reasoning is that they find themselves managing a process that are fine today in this world. The satanic person find themselves managing a process that God says I have to allow the satanic team to lead the world in certain circumstances, because the church are double-minded about their education, they're double-minded about their way of reasoning, and they are giving a Ribea Elise up in the house of New Zealand while they find themselves fine in the discussions that they mention Ribea Elise's name on. And there they the church meetings and the church leaders in the house, and there they God says he silenced the church mouths by killing baby Jesus on the cross of Calvary, because the management in that season was oppressive to humanity. And today when we look at different countries, we learn that many countries learns and depends on the opinion of the church, and the church is the one that instructs what happens in certain countries today. They find themselves in those discussions, and God saying on that day it was clear that the satanic is the satanic, but it's clear to say the church cannot manage the world, the church cannot manage humanity. The church has to step aside, because the church reasoning is oppressive to Mama Anna Philander, It was oppressive to Brother Richard. Ribea learned that the church might put her in danger, and Ribea was attentive to the church who have leadership around her, and when she finds herself in New Zealand, and therefore the church would have to step aside also, the same way oppressive leaders have to step aside, where there's a request that the church step aside with these leadership processes, because no pastoral leader can sit in a meeting and say that the bomb must go off in another country. No pastoral leader can sit in a discussion room today and say that that country should be punished about it. I say that today the church even also step aside, and humanity leads these processes in discussions, and that's where we are required to be at in our seasons. Those are the three things that I want, the few things that I want our generation to focus on before we go on next month with leaders leading this generation. I've been harsh. I've been saying what's required to be said, and I'm firm and direct with what I'm saying. And I'm just going to rephrase that I'm saying that no church can decide today on humanity, what happens in the next country. No church can decide today on leadership on humanity, because the church decides by giving an instruction to countries, and then countries are being bombed up about it. We find countries today where church leaders even laughs about the circumstances in this world today. And therefore humanity should learn that we need a team of leaders that will manage these processes in a way that every country is going to be fine. We are non-dependent today on no church leaders. We are not going to allow no church leaders to lead us in the season when it comes to discussion rooms of what happens in countries, and we are going to allow the human to give their opinion. We want our leaders in this world to listen to people's social media pages, to listen to everyone's opinions, and to therefore allow themselves to have the world being managed in a way that is non-aggressive to the world in general and to human beings on earth. That is it of what we wanted to say today, and where we want to be at with the discussion of leading this generation for this month. Have an amazing day. Yes, September is starting on Friday, and I always say baby September is our spring baby Anton Philander, and he's the baby boy of Mama Anna, the fourth born boy. And we are going to celebrate the season together with celebrating the beginning of a season for our generation. And I always say that our spring boy was oppressed in this world, and he was oppressed from a very young age. And he's our 9th of September boy, and not the 1st of September, 9th of September boy. And no one oppresses our spring blossom pea. No one will learn as human beings that our spring blossom peas are our baby boys, and we have been blessed with them. It's the beginning of a season. It's blossoming season for humanity, and the men of the house today, that is the baby for our Mama Anna womb family, and Papa Yapi is baby Anton. So we celebrate the blossomingness of a new generation starting in the month of September for New Zealand. South Africa also celebrates spring season from the month of September, and that's the beginning of the year. I've mentioned last year, it's like a January to us, and it's like a January for humanity. And our January baby was born on the 9th of September, and he was a boy, and he's our spring boy of our family. Let's celebrate everyone with their spring children kids. It's amazing blossoming kids. Let's not disrupt them in the universe, and let's not disrupt the education of the springness and of the blossomingness of seasons and of the birthness of humanity on earth. That's the amazingness. Have an amazing season further.